Well, the South Africa of 2018 is divided along racial and class lines. It's plagued by corruption, poverty and despair, and it's very different from the Rainbow Nation expected at the dawn of democracy. And these are some of the views of political analyst Ralph Mathekga in his new book titled Ramaphosa's Turn. Can Cyril save South Africa? And Ralph Mathekga joins us here in studio. Ralph, thanks for coming through.
Thank you.
And I think, a very pertinent place to start would perhaps be by looking at the report that we just saw from Cape Town, and the floods. Mm-hmm. And yes, of course, that's got nothing to do with Cyril Ramaphosa, but he is the president of this country that seemingly has gone from Ramaphoria to Ramaruan. And do you think that we've made that sort of transition too quickly?
You know what, Sakina, you look at the reality on the ground. What we've just seen is actually the reality on the ground. You go around townships. I know of some of the cases in Tembisa where some of the children have passed through electrocution. You've seen the cables going through that. The desperation that most people still find themselves in. And I think that as a nation, we are numb. We are getting used to that. It's no longer an issue. I think that maybe we are saying that we've got better things to worry about. We are being numb, and in that way you are leaving behind the larger part of the population as we are trying to think about this transformation. And unfortunately, the footages that we've just seen is actually what grounds us. It's actually what says that not so fast. You still have serious problems in this country. You still have serious massive inequality. You have the larger part of the population that is actually being left out. That is one of the reasons why you also have extremism, because if you have extreme inequality, you are going to have extreme ideas in society where some people, where some political parties are actually latching on that and trying to say that, look, forget about a consensus, forget about building a decent society. That's what you have, leaving behind quite a larger chunk of this population. And I think it also works into the current race relations. I mean, people who live in conditions such as that, what stake do they have in South Africa that will be built on concession? That's quite serious in my mind.
It certainly is. And just running through the book, it starts with the battle at Nasrec. And, then it moves on to this fragmented South Africa that Cyril Ramaphosa has inherited. Also touches on very many nuanced questions like the tripartite alliance, like the internal state of the African National Congress itself, the provincial conferences, and that as a method of continuing to dispense largesse within the party. And then also, you talk about a very important question about Cyril Ramaphosa and his links to the private sector, to business. But let's start here. So when the Nasrec conference concludes, the title question here becomes critical. Can Cyril actually save South Africa?
I mean, the mood that set up in Nasrec, I was there throughout the conference, and after Mr. Ramaphosa won the presidency of the ANC, I've had people saying that that's it, South Africa is undergoing major transformation, forget about the previous politics, divisive politics that we have had before. And I was one of the people who went on to say, wait a minute, the problem that we have in our society have become structural to a point where it will take a while to actually shift away from that. What are we seeing within the ANC now is that actually there is even indifference towards anti-corruption within the ANC. And even within our own society, there is still indifference towards anti-corruption. And it shows that that structure, that politics that we've set in the last 8 years, where we've been divided along racial lines, and that politics where even the anti-corruption maneuvers were being seen as a perpetration of a particular agenda within our politics. It's still there. It's still there. There has not been so much shift. But I think that it took a while for people to get to realize that it's not so fast. When President Ramaphosa announced his cabinet, which I thought was the main key decision he has taken since taking over as the president, that the reality came about to say that, look, you can't get rid of corruption in the manner in which people are expecting is going to happen. You are not going to lock people into jail. And my view was that what are the prospects of South Africa shifting away from that politics? Cynical as I might sound, my view is that you can only manage corruption at this point. Manage it. You won't have scandals week in, week out, as you did in the past 8 years. But certainly, you still have structural corruption that is there. And my view has been that if Mr. Ramaphosa goes all out against corruption, he himself will be out. That is just the way it is.
Why did you, and I thought this quite interesting, why did you decide on tracking this response from his past in the UDF?
It's because I thought that maybe we need a different type of leadership. I mean, if you look at what has happened within the past 8 years, it has been the moral basis of leadership in our society has been largely located within the ANC. And my view, I've spoken openly about this, Sakina. We've discussed it on various platforms that I've discussed with you, is that the ANC as a party, I've said it in my previous book, that they vandalized that moral position. So I thought that someone is coming from the UDF, maybe a new type of approach to leadership, a consultative civil society based, where the moral basis of leadership will not be located within a party, but will be spread across the broader society, across various civil society and NGO and so forth. That's what I thought, that maybe, just maybe, there is opportunity to inaugurate a different way in which you justify decisions as a leader, as opposed to just looking within the party. And I think the project is not really being successful. I do think that the ANC is saying that has made strict conditions for Mr. Ramaphosa. You are one of us. You're going to work within the confines of the party. You're going to work within where we are, where the party is, as you are looking at the problems across provinces and so forth. There is no willingness to actually relocate the moral basis of decision outside the ANC and share it across the society. That is what I thought, for me, mattered a lot. That glimpse of hope of a leadership that is consultative, that is not based on majoritarian politics, but it is based on what makes sense in the broader society.
That is but one constituency. You have another constituency, that is South Africa Inc., whereby even a beggar, who doesn't have a roof over his head, sleeping under a bridge, has a say and a stake in SA Inc., regardless of the fact that he doesn't have 2 cents to rub together. You have another constituency that is, of course, the private sector, that is business. And they are asking for certain conditions to be brought about in order for them to be able to flourish and help the country flourish. So how does he deal with the other constituencies outside of the party and its alliances? And
I mean, Sakina, this is the president who has had relationship with conflicting constituencies. You talk about the business sector, they've got their own demands. Some of people in the private sector were very happy with the VAT increase. The unions were not happy with VAT increase, saying that after all the looting in government, why are you then spreading the cost of reinstating the fiscus to everybody? Why are you punishing everybody else through VAT? Why can't you have maybe corporate tax, punish special interest for that matter? So I do think that the difficulty is how will this president actually navigate across different special interests, if you like. But what worries me is that as South Africans, we are still thinking a lot around factions. Pro-Zuma, anti-Zuma faction, pro-Ramaphosa, anti-Ramaphosa.
But this is what's being acted out to us. I mean, just this weekend, we saw that play out again at a regional conference in Gauteng. These are the reality, a litigious ANC and its alliances at the moment.
I do think that factions will play themselves out. They will run out of steam. What I'm worried about is interest groups, the groups that can function across different factions. I mean, the Premier League, for example, are they still being associated with President Jacob Zuma, or have they carved their own space?
What's your take on that?
I think they've evolved, and I think they are more complex than our willingness to, we're willing to accept it as a society. I speak in great lengths about the deputy president of this country who was associated with the Premier League, Mr. David Mabuza. Where is he? Very silent around the power play that we are seeing happening within the ANC.
And the KZN headache, of course, that you also discussed.
Exactly, the KZN headache as well. And the KZN, my worry about the KZN as well is that, of course, President Jacob Zuma's politics is still an anchoring point for resistance to transform the ANC away from that. But when I look at it deeply, It is all about interest group trying to get control of resources in provinces. The ANC and Mr. Ramaphosa used this phrase of federalism, the swear word within the ANC actually, where you're going to see consolidation of power at regions, across provinces by interest group, using that consolidation of power to lobby and influence the national leadership of the ANC to a particular special agenda beyond the factions that we know.
Just a quick one on the perception of President Ramaphosa's proximity to business.
It can become one of the main costs, and within the ANC, I believe that within the ANC, it remains his Achilles heel within the ANC, where some of the programs he's trying to come up with, even the anti-corruption, even some of attempts to try to get things right at the state-owned entities are being interpreted as the second capture. Now you're going to have capture. Call it benign capturers. Now you're going to have state capture, but it's not going to be the same as the one we have seen. It's not as pedestrian as it had looked. And I think that perception is there. You cannot fully dismiss people who are saying that, wait a minute, we don't want to privatize our state-owned entities. We don't want to privatize South African Airways. We believe it can be run properly. We don't think that state assets such as those should be given to private entities. My suspicion here and my view, Sakina, is that where we are, the leadership of the ANC, I don't think they have integrity to make critical decisions about the shareholdership of the state-owned entities. My view, close the tap, go gain a popular mandate, canvass, consult with the population before you can tinker with the ownership of state-owned assets.
Very interesting note to leave it on there, Ralph Mathekga, because it also speaks to the question of whether it was a stroke of genius or perhaps a miscalculation for President Cyril Ramaphosa to have stepped into the fray before going to elections to gain that popular mandate, as Ralph Mathekga put it. So, Ramaphosa's turn. Can Cyril save South Africa? This is the book trying to deal with some of the nuances regarding that question. We're going to leave it there for now.